running. This hangout is live,
Yay.
and Devin is making weird popping noises with his mouth, which is a part of maturation. And he's living with his two youngest offspring now, so that probably has something to do with making those gurgling, bubbling sounds.
Yeah.
How are you this morning, Devin?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, forgive me if I forget how to speak proper English. We like to use the body language here and stuff. So baby talk going on all over the place around here. So
that's very clever. And then we've got Barret Hadeen, who has just been preparing, packing, and boxing things like crazy because he's getting ready to abandon the United States for a brief period. How are you this morning, Barret?
I am doing pretty good, although I have to say there's some weird audio feedback coming through for me. I don't know if you guys are hearing it. So,
does someone have the YouTube page open? Do you, Chris?
Maybe that's me. Oh yeah, that's me. Thanks.
Yeah, it happened for a second for me, and then turn that on.
All right, got it fixed. So I was hearing like a delay of 5 seconds of everything that was being said. It was very interesting. All right, but now that's resolved. So I'm doing well, and yes, I'm heading out to Germany.
Germany.
Yeah, in about a month. So yeah, I'm actually really enjoying the snow and the time together. I got to hang out with Chris in person yesterday, grab some lunch at the awesome Chinese restaurant. So yeah, things are going good. Things are going good.
Oh yeah, you're near there, aren't you?
Yeah, we just went to Chinatown. So yeah, we're only about an hour from each other drive time. So
what are you doing in Germany?
Well, my fiance is from there. She was raised there, and opportunity to return to her roots has arisen, and I've decided to make the leap with her. And yeah, I'm going to keep doing my healing work, and I'm going to keep doing events and workshops, but with a new home base. So yeah, big things happening in the dream here. So
nice.
Well, and that's all wonderful and beautiful. And now, to move forward with assurance, we're going to review a movie that's actually an oldie, but a really great movie. It is Contact with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. And actually, one of them that really, burns his way through the movie is Gary Busey's son. Who
is that? The blonde guy that blows the place up?
Yep. If he moved in next door, I would have my house on the market in 20 minutes. All you have to do is take one look at this guy, and it's obvious that he is so far off the rails that there's no chance for redemption.
They sold that villain well.
Yeah, and he was picking up a lot of work like that in Hollywood, where he was, some psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est, but a little talking head stuff there, I think it was. Yeah. But nonetheless, and then Tom Skerritt just plays a complete Republican. I mean, he is just a Republican. If you want to define Republican imagery and ideology and lifestyle, pick up this movie and watch it, because Tom Skerritt really boxes in that whole identity beautifully. And James Wood is he's a snarly government man, but he tends to be snarly in a lot of his movies too. So the cast was a superb cast, and they really gave us some moments in movie time that are very, very memorable, especially the relationship between Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah. I mean, the movie from start to finish is excellently done, based on the novel by Carl Sagan, and the whole message, I think, was really inspirational, really beautiful, really touching. I agree. Jodie Foster did an amazing job. I mean, the range of emotion that she kind of has to portray in this character, and she just does it. You don't even think, like, it's just so genuine and authentic. So I've seen the movie, I don't know, half a dozen times, and every time I love it, and this time was no exception. I really, yeah, I was just saying to someone, this is definitely one of my top 10 movie list of all time for me. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy it myself. It's one of those movies I wish the climax was more of the movie. It's like fast forward just to this part. I really like that part. Anything that really gets me tripping out and alternate dimensions and all this stuff, it's excellent. But yeah, it's, especially this time, I thought I owned it, and so I was looking around every weekend for it the past few weekends. I'm like, where is it? Yeah, you know, it's around here somewhere. So I eventually gave in and rented it just this morning. But yeah, Jodie Foster is pretty amazing. You definitely see this like put off kind of disconnect, and it really is, this whole movie is like about her, and I would say the theme is building faith, the personal experiences of knowing that it doesn't matter what you call it, that there's something that we can't explain about the universe, and if it's God, if it's alternate dimensions, if it's higher powers of any sort, you know, it's pretty fantastic how she definitely portrays it and puts it off, where she really, like, was she looking to connect with aliens, or was she looking to connect with her father or mother, or was she looking to connect with God? You know, what was it? Was she really? It really kind of puts it off. You can take so many different levels to it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think really, ultimately, what we are fed as, you know, the content of the movie was that she was on a self-discovery journey, because that ultimately is what the final conclusion is that she arrives at this place where she has an experience and realizes that she's part of this vast phenomenon that we refer to as God. But more importantly, she comes into herself. She comes into a place of maturation where she's at peace with her life. She's no longer struggling with the loss of her father and her mother. She's no longer combative. She's no longer trying to force people to take, you know, the scientific angle rather than the purely spiritual angle. So we're getting a lot of different conclusions to all these unresolved parts of her life as we're being led down this path. And I think it's very appropriate in our current global situation to watch how Tom Skerritt jumps on the God train, and by doing so, you know, he's seeking the approval and support of everybody, but also manipulating everybody that he has any kind of communication or contact with. And in one scene right before he ends up being on the original machine and dying in the process, right before that incident, Jodie confronts him with the idea that it's not a world that is outside of us. She's already awakened to the realization when she makes that statement, I believe we make our own world. And so there's a lot of really profound ideas that come across in this movie, just in every section.
Yeah, yeah. One of the big spiritual themes that I got out of it, as I was just kind of in the afterglow of the image at the end, and was really thinking about how, again, her whole path through the movie really mirrors that spiritual path that she was kind of looking for what was out there. She was trying to reconnect with her father. She was trying to reconnect with, you know, beings outside of the earth, you know, and those were all sort of the outer reasons for her search, to try to connect and try to find what she felt like she was missing all along. But again, we all have that in our own way, whether it's, you know, a loved one we've lost like she had in the movie, or whether we're just sort of know that something's off here in this world, and the answers that the world gives us are not enough. So whatever the kind of form of it is, we all have this sort of inner drive to know something deeper, something bigger, something more profound. So I think that the whole evolution of her path and coming into this experience of communicating with these otherworldly beings near the end of the movie really represents our own path to coming to know the divine truth within. So again, whatever name we give it, whether we call it God, whether we call it the higher self, whether we call it our deepest truth, as we come into that realization of it, all of a sudden a lot of the uncertainty falls away, a lot of the fear falls away, a lot of the pain falls away, and we know that we're not alone, right? That was one of the big sort of messages that these other beings had for her, was you are not alone. You are not alone. You've never been alone, and you're part of something bigger than you. And I think that's really the undoing of the ego. When we step out of believing that we're on our own, we're already stepping into a greater joining and a greater connection.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And just to go to the beginning of the movie, that introduction right there coming, I love how the sound and the visual of coming from the planet, just everything as like the perspective gets wider and wider and wider, it gets quieter and quieter as they're moving away from the planet and galaxy and so on. It's pretty fantastic to even almost a whole synopsis of the entire movie in a artistic fashion of what's happening, because as it comes out of her eye, and you see that, and it's just in her perspective, in her mind, and then she's sitting there saying, come in, something or other, contact something, blah blah blah. And that's what she's doing the whole time. She's really just exploring what is all this depth of her mind, and it gets quieter and quieter. It's pretty fantastic. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, definitely a reflection of the whole spiritual path that we all go on, and we can't really share it. I mean, we can talk about it and the words get misunderstood, and you say God and people are like, oh no, I don't believe in God, and they're just talking about their version of God that they made up that they don't believe, instead of, no, you got to actually experience. It's beyond words. The whole thing's beyond words. It's just fantastic. I love it.
Right. And one of the things that I find interesting is that even though this movie is, what, 20 years old or more, actually, yeah, 25 years old, I believe. And the imagery that first comes through from that initial contact point is Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler. And, those images and those ideas of nationalism and the Nazi vision are still very vital in our current society. I mean, this is an ongoing source of dialogue and conflict. So it grabs imagery back in the 1990s that it makes the movie itself very salient in the moment, of 2019 that we're living in currently. And I like the idea that the movie doesn't give us a lot of projected, fantasized experiences that are non-relatable. I mean, all the scientific evidence, all the technology in the movie was what was available 25 years ago. There was not this foray into speculation about what the future would hold and, what science was going to uncover. It was very straightforward. The aliens had a technology that was easily communicable, and they sent the engineering schematics, and the world had the resources to build everything. So we're not seeing a lot of far-fetched ideas here. This is all very practical. This all could actually happen. And that was another aspect of the movie that I really enjoyed, because true science fiction, even though it has a vision of what possibly could happen in the future, it has to be hinged on what you can understand on a day-to-day basis in the world that you're living in. So that thought came across, I thought, very clearly. And that, again, was what made the movie so tangible for me.
Yeah, yeah, and I really like how she kind of developed, personally through the movie. Again, it was sort of that big turning point near the middle of the movie where they ask her in the screening process, do you believe in God? And obviously that felt like a big attack coming from this guy that she had this romantic interest with, but it also seemed to kind of derail her a bit from what she wanted. But really, it's sort of this interesting path, right? Because sometimes we think that when we are pursuing our path and we're committed to the truth, we look like we fall off the direction we want to go. But in the end, it actually took her right where she did want to go. So it's sort of like the bigger path is there. And sometimes if we just stick with what we know is true within ourselves, a way forward will reveal itself, even if it's something we can't see. Like there was that, after the first machine, was bombed in that terrorist attack, it looked like all the possibility of everything they've been moving towards was gone. But then, of course, it gets revealed that they had built a second machine, and that was the path that she was able to take and have this experience. So I just think that's a really cool metaphor for a spiritual path, that a lot of times it doesn't look like we're on track, and sometimes it doesn't look like there's any path forward at all. But that doesn't mean that that's the case. It just might be something that we can't see quite yet. So, yeah.
Yeah. There was two common phrases throughout the whole movie that really brought it together. I felt like the obvious one was about it's a whole lot of waste of space if there's no one else out there, right? And then the other one is that you're not some things you're not meant to know. And it kind of references to the journey. It's like, we have to hand it. It's either we think we have to understand and know it all, or put it into place, or to just accept that it's God's will, which is very arbitrary and misunderstood often. But in the sense that at the same time, even when the father first says it to her about when her father passes away, and the priest father says it to her, and she doesn't hear it. She just say, yeah, if I had the medicine in the basement down below, or in the bathroom down below, I could have got to it faster. And completely not registering that there's other ways of looking at the world. She's already built in this physical, three-dimensional focus, pretty much obsessed understanding. And really any sort of faith about any religion is just the attempts, if not the succeeding of, the seeing the world in an alternate dimensional perspective. And I feel like this, she finally has, and as she said, I had an experience. And it's, if someone says that, you just feel it, like, yeah, you had an experience. I wish I could understand and share that with you exactly, but it is definitely from a personal perspective, made just for your whole, like, just like how her experience was all just thoughts of her inner memories, Pensacola, the drawing she did, and her father, and using the words, and they're expressing their love in the same fashion. And all this stuff was very personal, and it's just like the spiritual universe just using its symbols, or the symbols that you are obsessed with, to attempt to speak to you. And it's in this alternate dimensions of existence. So she knows that there's more now. She knows that there's something she can't understand. And that's what's so beautiful about it, is that it gets you to question your reality. So I see the journey from being very solid third dimensional only, strictly existence, to wow, there's got to be there's a much bigger picture that we just don't understand right now, and of course referencing to herself, and it's just a beautiful change occurs.
Yeah, it's really fun watching her get pushed away from again that egoic mindset, and once she lands at the destination point that she's being taken to, I love that part where she's kind of reaching up and touching the universes that are out there. That there's that moment when it becomes very obvious that she is a part of something not only that is vast, but is extremely personal. So it's not like standing, out on your back porch, looking up at the sky at night and feeling a distance between you and the universes that are out there, but rather feeling like you are intimately a part of something that is so profound that there are no words that can fully express it. So this movie, considering how much Carl Sagan's input crafted the story, I don't think he was probably that aware of how much spiritual fodder he was presenting to the world, because he was a hardcore science guy and really pushed away from the idea of God and pushed away from the idea of astrology and all these different things that are a part of a lot of people's consciousness, that things that are already accepted by literally millions of people. The other thing I thought was interesting, all of my life I've always kind of dismissed that idea of government conspiracies around UFOs, because from my perspective, it would be a thrilling thing, or at least a pleasurable thing, to find out that we had companions, star partners that were hanging out with us. But I could never see a reason for containing that information, for hiding it, burying it. But then when you see the movie, right after they first released the story where she has made that first contact, the people that show up, unfortunately, are probably quite literally a true reflection of our society. So then you start to kind of move away from that idea that the government would hide it, because it would probably be something that would be very justifiable in some ways, because the lunatics that are magnetized to that site where they've got this array of the 40 antennae that are looking up into the sky, really does give you a crossplay of all the different interests and all of the different phobias and all of the different types of people that would be attracted to this in a very either Looney Tune or extremely violent way. And that violence that you see right under the surface as she's going through the crowds, I think does throw things back into appropriate perspective.
Yeah, I thought that was a great scene too. I thought that was pretty realistic as well. That something like that would trigger people to go to that space. I remember reading even a sci-fi book that was something like that, where there was people, I don't know, somehow there were people on the moon, I think, and then there were people on Earth, and they somehow had, there was some tension between them, and the moon people decided to throw some rocks from the moon down onto the Earth as a way to show their power, but they didn't want to hurt anyone, so they said exactly where it was going to be. But in this book, people came to that spot anyway, so it ended up being like it killed a lot of people, even though it was out in the middle of nowhere, because people were gathering to have the experience. And I thought, yeah, that's likely to happen too. There's all these twisted things, like people just kind of come out when something crazy happens. They want to be a part of it. So
yeah, and that's the truth. I mean, we all have our different perspectives, but we all want to really just to join together and experience together. And so we get this idea that there's something, and then we have these, even as she was driving down that road, and where that prophet guy, Joseph something or other, that Jake Busey appears for the first time. I love how the artistry of this whole thing, going through the music, one-eyed, one-eared, or one-horn, purple people eater, and all the different music of singing, and everybody's taking a different perspective. Everybody believes in something, and I like how they point out that 95% of the population of the planet believes in a higher power of some sort. Of course, that's all different ideas of that higher power, only like 40 of them being Christian. And it's pretty interesting that you go down and you see all those different people along that journey, and how they're taking different perspectives. Some people are for it, want it, praise Vega, and some people are completely opposed to it. And it doesn't matter. Everybody just wants to join together. And some people are completely want to blow it up and kill themselves over it. In the same way, it's interesting that they would take that. Something I don't understand is like, fighting for God is to keep God a secret or something, or they think they would be discovering something other than God, or proof that God doesn't exist. Doesn't really add up to me, because in this, it's kind of an example that I feel like it's religion and science coming together, that eventually science is going to be discovering what most people call God, and if they haven't already, and it's just coming together, and then there'll be joining really of alternate dimensions of experience. And somehow, I mean, of course, it's hard to understand, but somehow that it will just be coming together, and they're not actually, even though we say, I believe in all things that I can see, touch, and the facts, and someone says, I believe in only the things I can't see. All this is an illusion, And then people are saying, oh no, God is the unseen and the seen. And really, these are all just different perspectives of saying the exact same thing, just kind of different dimensional focus of the exact same idea. Essentially, they're all a different definition or perspective of what God really is. You can't say it's not something and it is something else. It's all coming together,
or at least trying to. We keep
trying to
apart over and over again.
Yeah.
Like those bake at home cinnamon pulls. In order to enjoy it, you have to pull it apart. But then at some point you realize, oh well, it's become a part of me now, and I'm part of the cinnamon roll, and the cinnamon roll is part of an even bigger picture here.
Got lost in the sauce. Yeah.
Yeah. And I am fond of the orange icing.
Yeah.
It seems to make everything very warm and fuzzy on a cold winter morning. But the other thing that kind of stood out, only because when I first went to Alaska, my first journey up to Alaska, we traveled up in I think it was like a 1970 Vega, and seeing that car club show up, and they were so oblivious to what was actually happening. They just heard the word Vegas, or Vega, and they were magnetized from Southern California out to New Mexico, just to be visible, just to say, yes, I've got my own Vega, and I drive around town with it every Saturday night, and we have great fun. So again, the different levels of how people get caught up in this situation are attracted to it. It's like the flame that pulls moths from all directions. And a lot of people, I think, in life, go through life attending events or being magnetized to conditions, circumstances. And once they get there, they don't have a clue as to what they're doing there. So, they go through the experience, they live through it, but it may be 10 more lifetimes before they actually figure out what happened. And, that kind of flips over into some of the events at Burning Man and all these different things, all these different phenomena that we are attracted to, but we don't even really understand what it is that is causing us to move in that direction. You know, it's like that old Sufi saying, that which you are seeking is what's causing you to seek.
Wow, that's a good one. And I really like what you guys are saying, you know, this idea that, as you were saying, Devan, that at the higher levels, you know, science and religion, they merge, you know. It's sort of like the higher level of all the religions and all the paths, they all point to one truth. But then within our society and within the movie, there are also all these elements that seem to say, well, it's science is true or religion is true. You know, science is real or God is real. You know, it's like there's all these conflict kind of energies, and they even have that conversation. Matthew McConaughey's character and Jodie Foster's character, basically saying there's two options here. You know, one they said is that there's a loving God who somehow, you know, let's torture, war, death, and famine happen, or option two, there is no God. You know, that was the way that they put it, and I'm like, no, that's the false dichotomy right there, right? And as we know from working on the course and practicing these ideas, that, you know, God has nothing to do with this world. That in truth, God is perfect love and would never create a world of suffering and pain. But just because He didn't create this world doesn't mean there is no God. And so, you know, once I got this kind of perspective from working with the course, I found it really helpful, because I was struggling to try to figure out, because I did believe in God and that God was loving and kind, but then I would always be like, well, how can I square that with the Iraq War, or, you know, Afghanistan, or all these things that happen over and over? How could there be a loving God and that? And, you know, I think for me, this makes the most sense, that really this world is just a dream, that nothing really happened, and that we're going to awaken back up to the truth that we really are. So similar to the journey that Jodie Foster takes through the movie, where she gets kind of a bigger and bigger perspective, like you said, also at the very beginning, we start to have bigger and bigger and bigger perspectives until our perspective is without limit. And at that point, then we know that there really is nothing to fear, that nothing bad or sinful has ever really happened. We just believed that it had for a while, and that we can know that we're safe and that there is no cause for upset of any kind. So again, I love all the sort of symbolism and the metaphors that really track along our own spiritual journey.
I really like Matthew McConaughey's question to Jodie. I should use their names, Palmer, Josh. I can't do that. Okay. Names are not my thing. But I love the question where they're talking about, how could you believe in a God, and what if it's not, you know, true? And he says, well, did you love your father? And I mean, how obvious is that to her? And to say even love is so unscientific as well, when even now I hear people saying stuff about, oh, it's just hormones and things firing off and all this crazy stuff happening. And yet in then another distance or dimension of it is the fact that the father's not there anymore and has died off long ago. And she could still say that she loved her father. And it's just like in that understanding and recognition that there's something in us, like that, what you were saying a little earlier about what draws us is what we're being drawn by, or however what you search for is what you search with, and all this idea is that, you know, in the same sense, at this, you have that knowledge in you, you know what the truth is, and that drive for that awakening, that drive for recognition or just discovery of any sort. And yes, it is over billions of years, little steps, little baby steps we're taking, just one little step at a time. And I mean, we got eternity to play with here, you know, we're eternal beings, we could do it as long as we want, but and throughout the whole occurrence, and it's just little steps. But just like how you could say I love, like, my brother who passed away 5 years ago or so. I could still say I love him, and how can I do that when he's not here, when he's not present? And even the whole idea of love, it is an indicator of faith. Like, she really, throughout this whole movie, was very faithful. I personally don't like the idea of faith, and as it's often described, but it's just this sense of knowing that there is more to life, and knowing that you have a purpose or calling. She had a calling throughout this whole movie, her whole life, just to do something very specific and to discover something. And in the same way as when I was going through my travels and everything, I've always had this strong calling, to this discovery and to these experiences and everything. And it's just pushing you and pushing you, and everyone really has it. And when it comes to that climax of the movie, you can see that it's all a big setup. It's been pushing you in that direction, in this direction, just trying to get you to move forward to it. It's inevitable. Like A Course in Miracles is a required course, and it's going to happen regardless. It's just, only the time you take. You can make it take a little longer by resisting it and attaching more, or you can, as she says, I'm okay to go. I'm okay to go. What willingness and readiness. I had flashbacks of many of my different experiences where I'm like, okay, God, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm just completely willing and just allowing. And as she was saying that, I'm okay to go. I'm okay to go. And just seeing that happen is just like so beautiful that just the willingness. She thinks it's all science when it's never been science. None of her life has ever had any science existing, and it's always been between her and God. And it's just absolutely beautiful. And oh man, they should make another movie about the second time through.
That's true. I would watch that for sure.
Maybe they could pick it up where she and Matthew McConaughey have a kid, and the kid is the next generation. It's like a psychedelic trip, and ends up on the far side of Vega.
Wow.
Yeah, this was one of those movies that brings up a lot of different thoughts that are very intimately connected to A Course in Miracles. And one of the other things that I really appreciated was the fact that when she lost her father, she never lost her sense of his presence, because that's where she ultimately lands, is on the far side of the universe, and he's the guy who appears to her. And I remember when my father died, I was age 6, and I went to the reception, the wake, and saw the body, and it was like a complete rejection of that, and because I still felt his presence around me. So I refused to go to the actual interment at that early age, because I had completely rejected the idea of death. And I think that that is, of course, the core of A Course in Miracles, is that we are being led step by step by step to that precipice where we plunge into the truth, which is all of the times that we thought we died are meaningless. They're pointless. They, in fact, never really happened. It was a hallucination that was self-induced. It's absurd, it's obscene, and it's very unproductive. Imagine if we arrived at a plateau where everybody here was living to 500 or 900 or 1500 years in each cycle before renewing and going to the next level. What could be accomplished? So this movie definitely hits a lot of different tones in that idea of spiritual awakening. And at the final outcome, you're left with a little bit of a guesswork thing, a little tiny piece of the puzzle that is still inserted there that doesn't seem to fit. And that is that the guy who financed the second machine, and who actually took over and financed and directed Jodie Foster on this adventure, you're left wondering, what if the whole thing was something that he created? What if instead of these guys from outer space, what if he was the one who built the plans, put the whole thing together, and had Jodie as an unwitting pawn create this production? So there's also that little wispy afterthought that comes to me when I watch this movie. And I actually watch it a couple of times a year because I have a copy of it. But it does leave you with a back door that's open for even more contemplation.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when it comes down to that scene where she's kind of testifying in front of what looks like some sort of congressional inquiry or something like that, that's when that idea comes forward. You know, he proposes that maybe this was all just a big hoax, that everyone got taken. I don't know. The whole thing seems a little overwrought to me. Like, you know, she shared her experience. And everyone, it seems like everyone is doubting her, everyone is attacking her. You know, when on the other side, you know, when they were selecting her, they had the inquiry, and they were like, oh, well, she doesn't believe in God, so we're not going to pick her, you know. Like, and then the other side, you know, later in the movie, oh, there has to be the cold hard fact. So it just seemed a little like, okay, this is a little too intense, you know. Obviously then that sort of sets up the scene where Matthew McConaughey can say, I believe her, and you can see the whole sea of people who believe her. So there is some sort of counterbalance to that. But I don't know. I mean, the whole thing, and then that little twist that they put at the end afterwards, where they say, well, there was nothing but static on her recorder, but there was 18 hours of static, which is how long she felt she was gone. And even though it looked like, you know, just a second or whatever on Earth, how come that didn't come out, right? Why does that need to be confidential? I don't know. That just seemed like, okay, well, then everyone would hear that and they'd be like, okay, well, then she's legit, you know. I don't know. That just seemed weird.
Well, I think it's the whole aspect of the ego trying to keep us focused on the doubt and the confusion, and make sure that we're just focused on the world, and there's always room for doubt, no matter what.
Yeah.
It's like you can choose to believe in God and see this, you know, the meaning to everything, or you can, you know, see the doubt and confusion and suffering and pain and all of this stuff. And like with this, I just see a big love story. Like, it is, to me, it's all between her and God. And it feels like the experience of people saying, you know, things that other people have said. It's all like those same words, you know, touching, you know, it's a big wide empty space, and it's really God saying, well, you made up an interesting world here. It would be a big empty space if you didn't have something else out there. And everybody telling her, yeah, well, maybe there's some other reason to things that you don't understand. And it seems like, you know, I just see her in her own, it's just the Son of God, and the rest of the universe is all just a representation of what she believes, and it's their relationship as I see all of this world. But the experience of just, you know, God, it's all, God doesn't care what you're manifesting, doesn't care what you think it looks like. It's still just God's love. It's just God's love, and it's just a story we're going to play out, just a movie. We're going to make it interesting in this fashion, in this captivating way. I mean, we actually thought we were watching a movie. And that whole experience, and it's very beautiful. It's just to have an experience, and that's really all life is about, is to join and have an experience together. And that's referring to God and the Son. It's all it is, an experience together.
Very true. And the Course always leads us back to that recognition that relationship is the central theme of how we evolve, how we move forward. You know, all the best movies basically are love stories, whether they end up as the lover is uniting or the lover is rejecting each other and going their separate ways. But the human version of relationship, the ego's idea of relationship, once you start down the path to a more awakened level of life, evolves to become the holy relationship. And we're told on numerous occasions in the Course that that is the tool that is most handily used in order to get us up to that next level of actually realizing that this tiny microcosm that we're existing in is a self-imposed limitation. So yeah, this movie fulfills that beautifully in that it is a great love story, and you can see that urge that has brought them together evolve to a much higher plateau of how relationships can become.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of cool levels too, right? Because she represents the scientific, kind of logical, rational, but searching for something more, searching for the bigger meaning. And then he represents, the faith and that part of things too. And so you can see as they come closer together, it's sort of like that societally or within any one of us, those things merging and melding. But I want to kind of also bring out the other thing about the love, which is that, one of the things that they kind of gave back and forth to each other throughout the movie was this little toy compass from a Cracker Jack box. And so right before she goes on this journey, he gives her the compass that she'd given back to him. And so as she's on this journey again, she's trapped into this chair, which she doesn't even think she should have because it wasn't an alien's thing. So right in the moment where the chair is starting to shake and the whole journey is getting pretty intense, all of a sudden the compass is floating away from her. And what does she do? Without hesitation, she unlocks herself from the chair and she goes to grab it, which is exactly when the whole chair like crumples and slams into the wall, which would have been super, dangerous if she were in it at that point. So what is this? Well, this is a symbol that if we listen to our love, if we follow our inner compass, it will always lead us true. So just beautiful symbolism, beautiful metaphor that sort of ties all these pieces together.
Yeah, I like that. And it's beautiful to see. And when you see them as separate people, that this whole experience of the relationship, at first, it is about her and separate people, and especially when she first discovers, or what's his name, the other guy discovers the plans. Kent discovers the plans on the static, and she's proposing it to the president's council, whatever they are. And it's interesting because they all share different perspectives, like plans of their colonization and plans of its big
Trojan horse,
and that's it, and different ideas, and you can kind of see that it's like one big mind. All of these different thoughts of what it could be, and she's sticking to, no, it's about connection, it's about joining, it's about coming together. And even though she doesn't know that she's a spiritual person yet, that's what it really has always been about. That she's really been trying to contact her mother. I mean, that's what the first question was, and then her father, and really just joining with meaning and purpose is finding what God is, essentially, that it is outside of this world, and discovering yourself. And so I just see it unfolding all throughout that. And really, as far as how I define a holy relationship is with a more of a WHOLLY, and it's the recognition that it's not just between her and Matthew McConaughey, it's between just the whole universe. And even though, yes, the stepping stone of what seems to be special between two people is eventually the recognition, whereas she's just taking steps, the recognition that it is, and it's always been all throughout life, that even though the faces seem to change and the objects and the places, that it's all just been a distortion or a misunderstanding of that same one holy relationship, which is between the Father and the Son. That's really all it is. It's just, can I recognize I'm always walking with God?
Yes, over and over and over again. Well,
Yeah.
it's been a great discussion about a great movie with you guys, and I'm sure we'll find that next important movie that we want to dissect and look at under the microscope of A Course in Miracles. So,
Are we done already?
I want to play more.
Yeah, well, I do want to point out, like, did she really ever travel through space at all? You know, I see it as it is definitely a doorway to an alternate dimension. Like it was as just a third dimensional perspective. She just passed right through, right? And yet she went into this pretty much how she saw the universe as symbolic representation, and it all really happens in another place, and it opened up that whole experience of an alternate dimension of still, even as the symbology of it is more like the spiritual universe and the representation of that, but on the other side, you know, it's God attempting to speak. I don't think it was even aliens at all. I think of it as just what she thought it was supposed to be like, trying to speak to her through all of that symbolism, and it's still just with God, and it's just absolutely beautiful.
And that really is what all of our journeys amount to, is that we think we're on the outside trying to get back on the inside, and the truth is we have been eternally immersed in God and never separate or apart. So over and over again, that theme resonates throughout the movie, and especially when she, like I had mentioned before, when she is able to like literally touch this sky that on this foreign soil, she realizes that it's a part of her. So it's all happening from within her.
Yeah.
And the important part that I think that comes through with that imagery.
I just kind of bounce off that a little bit. You know, if you look at this as all kind of, you know, being really like this inner experience for her, regardless of whether she went anywhere or this was just what happened within her mind, right? This is all happening in our mind. But the other part of the story that kind of fits with that is that they went through all this work, right? They went through all this work to figure out the plans, and then a lot of work to actually build these humongous machines, all for an experience that, again, from our linear perspective, was an instant. And it sort of is a beautiful metaphor for our spiritual path too, right? We learn inner discipline, we learn inner focus, we learn concentration, so we can kind of start to still the mind. But we learn and we practice and we work on releasing our fears and judgments. And we do all that so that we can come into just one instant, which is the instant of now. It's the holy instant that's always here with us.
Yeah.
And it didn't need to be hard, right? But we sort of had to do all the work to get to realizing that it was easy.
And how she said, everything that makes me human was telling me that this was real. And I just started talking about it, all the sensory perceptions. She could feel it, smell it, taste it, and everything. And it was as real as everything else. And so hopefully she starts putting that together, as she also was like, this is not real, but this is real. And this is, whoa.
Yeah, and that's again a reflection of the individual journey, because the individual doesn't exist. But unraveling the imagined separation can often be a very winding road filled with potholes and all sorts of disruptive experiences. And again, that's what makes it all come together for us as a very profound movie that gives us a lot of insight.
Beautiful. Thank you for allowing me to be here and join with you today on this.
Yeah. Likewise, I really am glad we got to connect. And I know we did kind of have at least one idea for what our next movie could be. We haven't totally set on this, but we were talking about the movie Moana, which I would be totally for, because I think that has a lot of beautiful spiritual messages in it too.
Yeah. All about being called to something that you are not allowed to go and not allowed to do. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's modern society. You know, we have our restrictions and our limitations on what we will allow others to express. So, but yeah, we'll have to make plans for the next communion here, where we can share some thoughts and some experiences that we personally took away from viewing the next movie on the horizon here.
Beautiful, beautiful. We'll have to do that before I head off to Germany, but even after I'm in Germany, I want to keep this going. So yeah.
When is that? When are you going?
February 19th. So
Okay. I'm building a small studio in the other room, so I'm actually doing some moving myself, but not quite as far. So I'm going to be collapsing all of my computer and everything for a little while. So we'll work it out when we can do this.
Cool, cool.
No, and in the interim, we can all eat Chinese food. That's all that really matters.
I like that.
So good.
So I will see you guys in a few days here. It was definitely a wonderful opportunity to share insights and to create good memories around a great movie.
Beautiful, beautiful. You guys have a great day, and I look forward to the next adventure we jump on here together.
Sounds good.
Static. Yeah.